Reskilling is what we are discussing today, and as we all know, it has always been kind of a critical component of overall L&D strategy. It is driven by the business need to do more with less, to allow people to learn and grow, and it also acts as a very strong catalyst to bring in the new and the right talent. But sometimes it is also driven by changes in the landscape, the business landscape, the ecosystem, and even the disruptions in the ecosystem. Something changes outside our company, and we might have to go and reskill a few people, or maybe more than few people. More or less, it's not like a standard rule, but more or less, it can be planned for and approached with a reasonable clarity and resources at hand. You know what you want to do in the next 3 months, 6 months. You have a plan in mind for the roles, for the people, for the teams. But this was not the case when the entire business ecosystem, and not just one or two industries, but literally like all of them faced an instant, sudden, massive, and pervasive disruption caused by a pandemic. And in addition to putting people's lives and safety at risk, it also put the entire businesses at risk. The kind of as offices shut down across the world, and there's no option to conduct business but to do it virtually or digitally. And that was a huge, huge change for businesses, to be operating under. The sheer scale and the disruption and the impact of the disruption did pose a big challenge of almost like another dimension to the HR and L&D leaders. In a single day, everything changed. We had new things to look at. We have new priorities to define.
My employees have been on the ground. They've been at the forefront. They are also considered to be frontline workers otherwise in terms of how the government sees them. And I think there are some very big lessons here for us, Amit. And I don't think it's going to be very different from what others have learned. It's just that we have been in the front line. So possibly we have, had to change ourselves and, like I said, unlearn a little bit faster than other industries. So we didn't have any time. We went straight into the eye of the storm, if I may call it that. Yeah. So coming to your question, it was more about really, focusing on what we had before. So what you do in a healthcare business, and this happens in most other organizations as well, is that you build the right relationships, and right access, because access is very important for us. Either it's the government, either it's the private hospitals, or the patient at large. Or if you look at what's happening on the ground in terms of a real rural healthcare situation as well. So access, very important, and therefore the relationships with customers, with patients are extremely important. Till now, my salesperson would do this, face to face, and I think all of us know how this happens. But coming to a sudden situation sometime in March last year, where everyone just had to turn around and do it digitally. And not just digitally, I think there was a period where it would be just on the phone. People did not discover Zoom at that moment. Customers were not really open to having a call the way we were having it today. So I think this is one of the biggest things, that we have learned.
Even in pre-COVID, but people were not accepting digitalization so easily. Of course, people were lying low and lagging in the cybersecurity as well. So for us as an industry and as a company, the changes were overnight. Because suddenly when your employees start working from home, the first thing you start asking yourself, how secure is the data? You would have so many accesses in the office they have to go through. So obviously there was an upsurge in the market. An upsurge was about security, about sensitivity. So there were two elements of it. One is, how do you provide and make your customers secure? Second, you as a company, how do you create that readiness to service these customers? Now, I just want to take a slight, I would say a deviation here. When the whole digitalization was happening, in that world, what is really happening is your physical world is getting replaced by a virtual world. Your physical world has many gatekeepers, from your police, from your society, from your home lock. Your virtual world has no gatekeepers. And sometimes, though we have been doing digitally so many things, we also get scared when we have to do a transaction, a huge amount of transaction on the bank platform. So I think with that, what started happening is with this upsurge, readiness of the organizations to cater to the customers suddenly became abrupt, suddenly became overnight. So many VPNs, so many remote accesses. Now the question is, if I have to really look at the cybersecurity industry, one of the major challenges we are facing is the shortage of the talent. If I have to look at US alone, by 2021, they are saying we have a shortage of 3.5 million cybersecurity professionals. Vis-a-vis 2014, where it was 1 million lesser than this, which means this gap is increasing every day. And with digitalization and upsurge, it only got doubled. So going back to the statement which you said in the beginning, are we racing to reskill? I would say we are panting to reskill.
And I'm taking you all across that remote village where there is a farmer and there's a small retailer, couple of distributors who never thought, they could ever be on a technology platform. And they were always physical meetings, including our own people. They were all used to meeting people physically, right? And doing all the transactions over calls or over meetings. Nobody thought they could open up a laptop and start working on Zoom. And that was a big change for us. And while I state that story, I think it's reskilling is our own transformation journey at Dhanuka, because we had to get everybody on the board in terms of getting them skilled. So first, our priority was to get some critical talent identified and get them completely skilled into this new ecosystem. Develop some kind of ecosystem which helps people to self-learn, this whole platform. So we kind of got people into completely online learning platforms, educated them to start assimilating things online on their own. That's how you start transforming, and that's how they'll teach their distributors and farmers to be on board, right? So first they have to be on board. So that those ecosystem and platforms helped us to get people to start learning. We can learn wherever we are sitting.
To give you a perspective, I initially mentioned about some percentages about what is the increase will happen both in technical skills and social skills, and almost about going forward 26% increase going forward will be in the key social skills. What we believe that more than just the technical skills which are coming forward, the software aspects will play a key role. The larger leadership aspect, the larger behavioral aspects, because that itself is undergoing a tremendous change, because a lot of technical skills will get automated. In one of the reports mentioned that almost about 66% of the manual work will get automated in next few years. But at the same time, when it comes to empathy and support, only 23% is what some of these technology or apps can do it. You still need 64% human touch. So there is a lot of effort and a lot of focus which will be required to be built when it comes to the larger software aspects in the teams. So what's going to change? Because what we have seen in the last 1 year, fundamentally that, and many of others, my panelists have also talked about, that the world around us has fundamentally changed. So which means what? Ability to work with virtual teams. Now somebody also mentioned that. How do you really make people believe that yes, even if you are working from anywhere in the world, you can be still effective? The difference between work and the workplace. Earlier the work and the workplace used to be same, but now we are saying that the work and workplace are two different things. My workplace may be my office, but I can work from anywhere else.
We grew during the pandemic time in a classical business by 40-45% CAGR. And we have a track record of growing business of 46-47% for last 10 years. And we did grow by 45% approximately during last year also. When the shops were closed, the markets were closed, people were not buying. There was economic depression of 7-8% in the country, GDP decline. How do you grow in this? So one thing we very early realized at the beginning of the pandemic itself, there is no playbook which is available. No, there is no BCP which is going to work. First of all and there is no management theory, management hierarchy. There is anything which you learned in the B school, or they famously quoted what you learned in Harvard or in B school, it's not applicable. So we realized it very, 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 very early that the classical theory is not going to work. Now, what do you do in such a scenario? So essentially, this is the first time out of 7 billion population, 6.5 billion population, 5 billion population of the world was at a flat. Which means everybody was under lockdown. So everyone was facing the same problem, and I think that's the first time after the World War II, the the world would have come on the same platform of facing the crisis. And this crisis was in the war, the crisis was not into every household, but this time the crisis was in every household. So the sensitivity to deal with the crisis was more built on the fear than any opportunity around it. So that's a more psychological part of it. Now, when you run an organization, so there are two things which we talked about. How do you manage life? How do you manage livelihood? Without livelihood, there is no life, and without life, there is no livelihood. I mean, how do you survive that? That's the core communication and the thinking around that we built in at the beginning of the pandemic.